We're back on Inside USA, coming to you this week from Argentina's capital, Buenos Aires. This weekend next, we're looking at the U.S. relationship with Latin America and what the next president will inherit in January 2009. In a moment, a report from Venezuela. But first, back to our conversation right here about the U.S., Latin America, and the big picture. In Latin America, the rejection of the Bush years has been fiery, particularly from Hugo Chavez. So how should the United States be dealing with the rhetoric coming from Venezuela?
Well, but finally, Hugo Chavez is a close ally and partner of the United States. He's almost a multinational whose income is in dollars, and he's using very badly those dollars. He's speaking of something that almost nobody knows what it means, that socialism for the 21st century.
There seem to be millions of people who are resonating with that message.
I don't think so. I don't really think that there is a proposal of real leadership. That means he's not in any way the future Castro in the 60s or in the 70s.
But when he yanks the chain, the United States seems to jump reliably. It's almost a symbiotic relationship. They take each other's bait, and maybe they're using each other. So how does the United States handle that situation? How ought they to?
What is clear from a Latin American perspective, I will argue, is that no one in the region wants a return to the Cold War. Venezuela is not Cuba. No one will encircle, contain, roll back the Venezuelan revolution. We are willing to live together, but also we are willing to maintain democracy, opening and pluralism. And these things must be checked by Latin America and not by the United States.
The United States, the State Department has been absolutely silent on the civil conflict that's brewing in Bolivia. Juan, what role do you think the United States is actually playing in the conflict between Bolivia's oil-producing provinces and the Morales government?
I sense a level of rationality and maturity that was not there 4 years ago.
So what would the U.S. have been saying 4 or 5 years ago?
Well, it was intervening in domestic politics. It was creating an anti-Morales agenda and anti-Morales forces. It was proclaiming that those people were crazy cocaleros. I mean, this is out of the picture right now.
Diego?
I personally have a lot of confidence in the Brazilian diplomacy, that I know that they are not doing any noise, but working very, very hard, and that finally an agreement is going to be achieved, because if not, we are facing a civil war within Bolivia.
And that's the last word. Gentlemen, thank you for talking to me today. When it comes to anti-American rhetoric, the undisputed Latin American champion has got to be Hugo Chavez. But his hostility towards empire is shared by many in Venezuela, some of whom have begun arming themselves against the day they believe the U.S. will come for their oil. Here's Monica Villamizar with a look inside the citizen militias of Caracas.
Across Caracas, a vast army of citizen soldiers is training for battle. From the ragtag militias that control the capital's sprawling slums, to the thousands of ordinary Venezuelans who turn out to serve in the reserves.
It has been nearly 3 years since President Hugo Chavez created the reserve forces, thinking that they could play a key role in the event of a military confrontation. Today, hundreds of men and women have joined and trained to defend what they call the Bolivarian Revolution.
The purpose of this vigilance and training, to guard against an invasion that this country's president has been predicting since he came to power 9 years ago.
What are you defending Venezuela from? Who are you defending Venezuela from?
Our country is a target because we have oil and gas reserves. This makes us a target for imperialist powers.
The imperialist power that most worries Venezuelans, the United States. Everyone is welcome in the reserves: housewives, office workers, students.
I believe, as Chavez says, women are a bit smarter than men. I think I can handle a gun as good as any man, or even better.
I
I feel very excited to be able to serve my nation.
it's not just games. It's a very serious fact that the people of Venezuela have to, assume and take responsibility for, in the sense of building up a defense. Colombia is, of course, the biggest threat in terms of U.S. Occupation, U.S. armed forces or Colombian forces command and controlled by the United States. And at the same time, the diplomatic spokespeople of the United States are trying to classify or link Venezuela to terrorism.
Eva Gollinger, an American activist deeply critical of the Bush administration, says that the recent incursion of Colombian troops inside Ecuador to target the FARC is worrisome for Venezuela, and accuses the U.S. for directly funding anti-Chavez groups and interfering in the political process of a sovereign country.
Funding through USAID and National Endowment for Democracy of opposition groups here and NGOs to help to keep the conflict alive.
Opposition figures accept receiving money but insist that funds are not being used for political ends.
We have even been accused and prosecuted with even a 16-year prison term because we receive effectively $31,000 from National Endowment for Democracy, something that we have publicly accepted and we want to even increase to educate citizens about democracy and their political rights.
Inside USA asked to speak to the U.S. Embassy in Caracas about these issues, but they failed to respond to our request for an interview. The reserve forces are not the only ones concerned about the threat from America. Much of the slums are controlled by militia groups, which helped bring Hugo Chavez to power and have been the backbone of his support, particularly among the millions of poor.
30 different militia groups control the 23 de Enero, a neighborhood in Caracas known to be the stronghold of Chavez supporters. Recently, one of these armed groups decided to place 25 security cameras to monitor who enters and exits this part of town.
The militias say they are loyal to Chavez and share his concern at an attack from America. They have even set up an alarm system to warn the population of intruders. When Chavez came to power, many revolutionary militias put down their weapons because they had achieved their goal. But now some are rearming. And the recent display of force brought condemnation from Chavez himself.
What does this look like? Can anyone tell me if these people are behaving like revolutionaries? No, they are terrorists, and a serious government can't accept this, and I'm sure the CIA is behind this.
We're a militia, not a terrorist like the president said. We're revolutionaries. We have shed a lot of blood. My son was killed, and we lost 3 comrades defending this neighborhood and the Bolivarian Revolution.
What worries the president, perhaps, is that he can no longer control all the elements of his Bolivarian revolution. That doesn't help the image he's tried to create for himself as the man who is liberating Latin America from what he calls American imperialism. And as the man best suited to distribute and defend his country's oil wealth.
That's all the time we have for this week's show from Argentina. Next week, we'll be in Bolivia, a country embroiled in a dramatic struggle over control of its natural gas. We'll look at the U.S. role there and its relationship with the government of Evo Morales. So until next week in La Paz, so long.